Good morning, everyone. Here for another episode of Duckman TV. I have a special guest on today from Hills Football Association, Dan Sheppard. Dan, how are you going?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me along.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. So I understand you have a role with Hills Football Association as a technical director there, and just gave me a little rundown of what you do. Can you tell everyone out there that's listening sort of what you would do, like in clubland, at the club level and grassroots and that sort of stuff, please?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of avenues to my role. The first one, which probably takes up a large part of my time, is sort of the talented pathways for players. So the representative football. I manage the AYL program. The players train three sessions a week and in games, 27 rounds across Sydney across the season. They actually started training back on Wednesday this week, so they've had a couple of training sessions in. I link in with Hills United, although that club is not my responsibility, but I sort of provide some guidance to them and try and filter players towards them. Then I also run all the coach education for the entire district. So there's 20 clubs in our remit where I'll try and get out to all 20, deliver a variety of mini-roos, skill trainer, game trainer, and C license coaches courses across those coaches. There's about 1,200 or so coaches within the association of different capacities, different skill levels, different level of knowledge. Most of them, 95, 99% of them are volunteers that probably would rather not be there, but no one else put their hand up, or they were the last ones to say no. So I work with those, and then tying into clubland, how the association can support clubs on the ground with be it development programs or just advice and guest sessions, all sorts of things. And then probably the last part to my role is our development programs that we actually deliver. As head of football, I manage some of our staff that actually do go out on the grass and coach these programs. So we have an academy that runs currently Monday, Friday, and that's open to any player of any age. You can actually live outside the association as well. It's, the oldest player, I think, is 15 within that, but basically it goes from the majority of players are 5 to 14 across that. And then we also have programs where we deliver at daycare centres. We have a 3 to 5 program where they can come to our office. We have a breakout room in our office where they can, 10 kids at a time or so, can kick a ball around, as well as we'll go actually to clubs and deliver either coach the coach or coach their players, depending on what they need across that space, trying to upskill their coaches and their club to be able to deliver that program and hopefully one day walk away and not be needed in that environment.
Yeah. So that's an interesting situation to offer and provide opportunity for 3 to 5-year-old kids, because there's no associations I can think of. I've got contacts in Nepean and played at Nepean for 32 years and in Blacktown for a couple of years as well. I'm not aware of any other associations catering for that age group to provide like a try football situation where they come and play and just kick around and have fun. That's ultimately, that's what it is at grassroots level.
Yeah, there are some associations that provide it, but not to the level that we do. Most of the associations that provide 3 to 5-year-olds, it's passed back to the clubs to deliver that themselves. And it will be, again, with a volunteer coach or very minimalistic. And it becomes almost in the too hard basket, because how do you get a volunteer coach to work with 3, 4-year-olds when it's their first experience ever of the round ball? It becomes quite tough. So that comes down to a previous general manager of ours that was saw the vision and sort of said, well, how can we help to grow the interest in the game in our area? And if they're kicking a ball at 3, 4 before they go to kindy, when they go to kindy, they're hopefully going to transition into club football a lot easier because they understand the landscape a little better, got more confidence, all of those sorts of things, and then hopefully bring a friend as well. And we are seeing a trend of players going in from our 3 to 5 year olds into clubland, which is really good. Probably the most pleasing part of that program we deliver at the moment is the ratio of males and female participants. In our traditional winter program, it's about 10% of players are female. In 3 to 5 year olds, it's about a third are female. So
that's good numbers.
That's where the future growth is for female footballers. That those 3-year-olds in 10 years' time, it's going to be hopefully around a third participation rate of females in comparison to males. That's the hope, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. We just have to hope that continues.
Yeah, well, ultimately, you've got like a 50-50 population split. So you would nearly think that sometime in the future, we'll get like a 50-50, 47-53, some sort of level like that down the track for football across the world, not just in the hills or in Australia.
We'll need a few more pitches to be able to run around on, but yeah, hopefully.
So how big's the demographic, so let's talk about geographic area for Hills Football Association, because the new association started in 2016, as you told me the other day. Where's your boundaries? What are you capturing?
So basically, Winston Hills is the lowest suburb in the southwest. Then you go straight across to North Rocks and Carlingford. Half of Carlingford's in, half of it's out, and then you sort of follow up in a bit of a going almost towards a triangle, and you kind of Castle Hill up to Kenthurst, Glenorrhy. On the right, and then on the left, Rouse Hill, Box Hill. So The boundary on the left's really easy. We just follow Windsor Road, Old Windsor Road, pretty much all the way up to there. And then around the top, it's quite a skinny association. Driving from North Rocks to Box Hill on a Saturday morning is not necessarily too enjoyable with Sydney traffic. But it's growing. We are roughly between 12 and 13,000 players, which puts us across the metro associations in Sydney, puts us about middle of the pack in terms of player size. So considering we're relatively the newest by some distance, we're sitting comfortable in the player base, which shows how there is that enjoyment for football in the hills, and it's only growing. We've got Bella Vista Football Club, which is going to start this year. They're coming off the ground, and there's going to be new grounds being built in Box Hill and a couple of other bits and pieces. So it's still going to continue to grow. And we know that in the Hills district, it's such a popular sport in comparison to the other football codes that it dwarfs the others that left them behind in terms of participation numbers.
Yeah. And as a whole, you're in a growth and development area of Sydney too, where they're building new estates still. That whole dynamic in that area has changed a lot in the last 10 years or 20 years, and even the last 10 years is still continuously growing, developing, and there will probably be more new suburbs we're not even aware of in another 10 years time. So it is a big footprint. So the other end of the say some of Carlingford falls into the Hills Football Association, the rest falls into Gladesville, does it?
Yeah.
So that's the boundary running up around Gladesville, run up towards Gladesville, Hornsby. They're capturing that sort of area up there as well, are they? So
it doesn't. I would like to see it follow Pennant Hills Road, but the Cherrybrook doesn't fall into our association. That one's into Northwest. So it sort of comes up Pennant Hills Road a little bit, then round Cherrybrook up Castle Hill, follows Old Northern Road. Our eastern boundary is probably thinking of it as Old Northern Road, and then the western boundary is Windsor Road, which means from Castle Hill to Norwest, it's not very far across. It's only 2 suburbs wide at one point of it. But there's lots of clubs within there. We've got 20 clubs in our remit, which is a good, healthy number. Some obviously very large, like Kellyville Colts, and some that are small, like Bella Vista FC, who are kicking off in a couple of weeks' time, and we don't know what they will look like. Yeah,
so that's what I was going to say. I'm aware of you got clubs like Borkham Hills have been around for a very long time, so they would have quite a big footprint. Some of these big clubs in your district, wouldn't they, player numbers wise and stuff like that?
Yeah, so your biggest clubs in our area: Kellyville Colts, Boreham Hills, Castle Hill, Hills Knights, North Rocks, Rouse Hill Rams. Those are sort of the larger clubs that we have, and they've been established for a number of years. Be that in the Granville District days as well, and they've continued to grow in recent years as well as everyone else. So we're now getting into a position where how many players can we fit on the same patch of grass?
Yeah. So that's the big thing. Everyone's looking for green space. So where do you get more green space? So it's not really in developers' plans when they build new suburbs and stuff like that, unfortunately.
No, but we are fortunate in the hills that there are still developments happening, so they are slightly mindful of that. We're not in the issues that the eastern suburbs or Canterbury or something have, where you can't go and knock down someone's house to put a football field, right? So Hills does still have room to put some things, and we are quite fortunate that Hills Council are being proactive, and so they've just finished Balmoral Reserve, where Bella Vista will move into, and they're doing a couple more developments in the coming years as well. So we're thankful for that, but we do wish it was a little bit faster and there was perhaps a little bit more, but beggars can't be choosers.
Yes, right. As you advised me when we had a chat the other day, you said that the curriculum's changed a little bit from coaching perspective, because I remember when I did my senior license and that stuff, I was looking at doing a C license, and you had to do a youth C license and the senior C, combine it. It's about $3,500. It was a bit prohibitive, to be honest with you. The opportunities weren't really there unless you were intending on coaching SAP or going to youth league, women's MPL or stuff like that. Are there more opportunities now? And what does that footprint look like for coaches if they want to continue their development?
Yeah, that's one of the positives, I guess, with having the Hills Association starting up, that because we've been able to provide more opportunities to not just the players, but to now clubs and coaches, and having that a few more staff in closer to home provides those opportunities. So we actually qualified just short of 250 coaches last year, and we were on comparison to the same number the year before. But COVID sort of put a little bit of a denter in that one, with the season running short the year before, so we didn't quite hit the same number. But yeah, on average, we would be about 250 qualified coaches every year across all the certificates that we run, be that community courses and the C license. And as you say, the C license has changed its structure in recent years. There's now a little bit more flexibility in terms of you might want to bring your own playing style, where previously the curriculum sort of said, no, we want to give you this in this way to do it for the start. We sort of relaxed that a little bit more and said that in the real world, you need to do what you see fit to get the best out of the players. On course, we're just going to help give you the tool set that then hopefully you can choose that when you get to real world, rather than having to do the same thing every single time. They've condensed the C licensing. It used to be 7 days to do part A and the youth, and then an extra 3 days to do the senior, or you would drop the youth to do the senior. So it would take 10 days to complete the entire C license, where now we've condensed that to 7. There's no youth or senior, it's just your C license. So and then across the course, we just continue to deliver the senior and the youth components to give the candidates their entire experience with that. We've also tried to add more practical onto the C license, so that everyone should get the opportunity to deliver 2, 3, possibly 4 sessions across those 7 days, because we can all be great coaches talking about it in the classroom and on the whiteboard and analysing a game, and we're all brilliant coaches when we're spectators watching on the weekend, right? But the money really comes from actually you on the park. Actually, what did you say? Why did you say that? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? So giving them an experience actually on the park is quite valuable. So we try to increase that. It just depends on really the group size, which we've also tried to reduce the group sizes. So I've delivered 3 C licenses in the last 12 months, and we've averaged between 16 to 18 coaches on course, which helps us get more practice going on, because there isn't a huge group. But then the downside is you have to be the players as well, because depending on when we're running the courses, the players are either playing or the players are on school holidays or something like that. So we do try and get players in, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to do it. When I did my last senior license that I had, you needed to participate in it, and then you can see how difficult it is to execute some when you go, oh, I want to come up with some Eric Ten Hag plays. We're going to do this and that. We'll try to execute that. That's not so easy to do. So, and the funny thing was, I saw a bit more simplistic approach to coaching style instead of trying to be the big strategist or big tactician and come up with technical stuff that's out of the books. It's just unrealistic for coaches at a grassroots level. It was much more better to take a minimalistic approach with achievable outcomes and achievable realities, as opposed to, oh, well, we're going to win the World Cup in 3 years with this style or something like that.
If any of my possible coaches have gone on to one of my courses, one of the things I would love to see that they would say in review of my coaching style or my education style is simple is normally better, and don't overcomplicate it. Have some progressions in the back of your mind that if they're working really well, you can make it harder for them. But in general, use less cones, use less direction, let the players create things as they go through, but you just make it look like a match or a game with some goals and scoring objective as often as possible, because that's what happens on the weekend. Coaches don't need to feel the pressure of coming up with a brand new session every single session. They don't need to come and feel the pressure of, I have to design something that's going to be really complex or interesting, because which player has ever turned around and said, I'm bored of playing a game? No player has ever said, I don't want to play a game. But yet the game is the same every Saturday for our life, right? There's a goal at each end. The only thing that changes is the size of the ball and the number of the players, depending on how old you are.
Yeah.
So we're happy to turn up on a Saturday and play 11v11. Why do coaches have to feel the pressure that the training sessions can't be similar every single session? And in the classroom at school, right? You wouldn't chop and change the subjects you're doing, or algebra, and then you're doing multiplication, and then you're doing this, and then you would gradually build it. It's the same sort of thing. Just give them some repetition. If it's exciting in terms of that they can score a goal, they're going to be happy. Don't feel like you need to do this, have all these cones out there and you need to run around this one. That just creates confusion, and then they slow down because they don't know what they're going to do. Yeah.
So worked a lot last time I was coaching, only coached at like a Premier League level in the Blacktown competition, and lower when I was in the PN, but worked a bit on change management style as well. So if something you're doing is not working, change it up, but not asking for you to go from changing big tactical things. Let's just try to change something. So if you see a team's exploiting an area of the field, or you can get a benefit out of something, have like a second system or something that you'll change that might make it better or get a different outcome. Did you focus a little bit on that with the coaches as well?
Yeah, so we have something we call, for the 2 levels of courses, if it's on the community courses, we call it So Change It. So there's elements of what can you change if it's not working in your session or in your design, and trying to give them some observational and analysis skill to pick it before it's a problem, that they don't walk away from their session and go, I never want to coach again, that was just a disaster. Like, well, was it too small? So they were always running into each other, because no player is ever going to turn around and say, you're a bad coach because we're in the wrong size area. If you go, let's make it 10 meters bigger, they're not going to know that you have designed that wrong or whatever. Or you just sell it as, go, great, you guys are doing so well now, let's make it bigger and give you a greater challenge. Or do you need to sub a player out? Because it's surprising even sometimes how players go, coaches will go, oh, he needs to play here. Well, maybe, but he's got a skill set that might stop that opponent. So give him 5 minutes, 10 minutes to see what happens. So we have So Change It in the grassroots space, and then in the C license space, we have the checklist, which is very similar. Goes through a few steps to sort of say, before you get to the problem, what have you done as the coach to affect that before it's sort of the player's issue? And there's parts of that where it's just training related, and there's parts of that skill set can be used in terms of game day, because hopefully when we're at the top level and you're playing in professional environment, you can't just sub someone on, or possibly you're at a stadium where it's packed and they can't hear you on the field. So how do you get that message out to your players without relying on the fact on grassroots, because there's only the parents there? You can scream and tell them every single thing that they need to do. Great, you might have managed to do something, but the players haven't worked something out. You've just lost your voice. For what benefit? Give them the skill set, give you the skill set to adjust it before it is a problem.
Yeah. So how many women and young children are you seeing come through the coaching programs at the moment that you're running?
Coaching courses, it's just above, it's 11% of coaches in the association are female. So we're quite low on the coaching participation for females, and what we're running a few initiatives to try and help with that. Last year we ran our female only coaches network. So we just open invitation, anyone that is interested in coaching or was coaching, or even the team manager that thought maybe coaching might be, maybe. So it was very open, relaxed environment. You didn't have to certify any criteria. And we had, I think it was 6 meetings across the year. And so it would be roughly one a month, one every 6 weeks or so. Some were in the classroom, some of them were out on the park. Come and watch this session with this coach to do it. Just provide an extra layer of support for those females. We ran a couple of female-only coaching courses, which was a weird sort of scenario for myself, delivering to a group of females and sort of having the shoe on the other foot, feeling that intimidation factor that I've got all this different gender that are going to judge what I'm saying. I'm just a male. And so that's sort of an eye-opener for myself in terms of, I kind of feel why should it be awkward that I'm a male in front of 12 females or whatnot? But then you sort of get appreciation of how they feel when they walk in the room, being the only female in testosterone environment. So we're looking at doing that. So, but probably the really pleasing growth I'm seeing in the coach education space is the younger females, the sort of 16-year-olds, 18, 19-year-olds. There's more of them starting to go through coaching courses and take coaching jobs to get a bit of pocket money or something like that hopefully will grow into really established coaches and will take on teams and do fantastic for us in the future, because we need the growth from everywhere. And we know that females are very good educators. You just look at a primary school environment, something like 95% of teachers in a primary schools are females. So why can't that skill correlate to coaching? Because isn't coaching teaching?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely it is. So they're talking about at the moment, they think it won't be very long before we see the first women's head coach potentially in the A-League, and they're even talking about how long that will be before we see that in the EPL. So they think that's much closer than perhaps what it might have been a pipe dream 20 years ago. You wouldn't have even thought about it, to be honest with you. Do you think we're heading in that path, down that direction at the moment?
Definitely, and I think it only take the first one to get there and open their eyes, to open the world's eyes, and then hopefully they do at least show some success, and it'll break those barriers down for everyone. Because why is it okay for a male to coach females? It should be exactly the same in roles in reverse. And you look at Chelsea women's have done fantastic, and where else do they go in terms of their coaching? Is there a move where they can move across into the men's space, vice versa? I'd love to see it in a position where we don't view the males' game as more superior than the females. And we can see in the UK the interest after the Euros in the women's football was growing, and they're selling out most of their women's Super League games most weekends. And I know they're on a bit of a winter break at the moment, but when they come back, it's going to be really interesting to start to see, do they need to start moving out of these boutique stadiums to start filling them? And then, some of the best coaches I've worked with have been females.
Yep.
It's a disadvantage just to assume that they couldn't because they haven't played as much or whatever. And that's the common misconception I have with parent coaches, volunteers, and why it's often the dad that coaches. As the mum, I never played, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, yeah. if you're coaching under sevens, how detail orientated do you need to be about the game? As long as they're having fun, isn't that the objective?
Yes, absolutely. So, and to talk about great women's coaches, I suppose we could talk about Heather Garriock as well, the Australian women's. She's very switched on and would be a good example of where you can go if you wanted to develop as a women's coach and stuff like that as well.
We got, Heather was on my A license. So met Heather, done a couple of things where Leah Blaney was also on that A license, and she's gone on and done very good things with the young Matildas. So there's a number of them that are around that are getting opportunities. It's definitely a pleasing space that hopefully it'll be, they said 50-50 playing one day, 50-50 coaching one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I want to touch on before we go is this season sees Hills Football Association come in conglomeration with Blacktown and Granville to have a women's dedicated Premier League joined between the three associations to create the strongest environment possible for women's football. I think that is a massive step forward. And how do you see that playing? How are the different associations going to contribute to that?
Yeah, we were actually overall really pleased with that. We brought back the Women's Premier League in the Hills started, was it last year? It's the first year or 2 years ago? It might have been the last lockdown year. It's all blurs into one now. But the issue we found with Women's Premier League in the Hills was at that age group, there just isn't the critical mass yet of similar ability of players. And the same clubs were going to win it each year. And then the competition was smaller because there was less teams that were able to compete into that division. So it was kind of a sensible decision to go. The important thing for us as Hills Football is we want to provide a good competition for the players to play in. And we don't want to have the bottom place team always be in the bottom place team without a shot of knocking someone off, vice versa. So Blacktown and Granville had already combined with their division, and they were still fine, and there was a little bit similar in the bottom teams were there. So we've just added our cream into there, and it's going to be many eagle eyes watching on it to see exactly how it works. And hopefully like versus like is going to breed a really competitive environment and a really good development environment where people are going to be enjoying to go and watch those games, but also playing them. And in the few years, we'll have a few more clubs be able to produce women's Premier League squads as well. And then you've got beyond that, Hills United have, last year was their inaugural year of women's in the WMPL space. So we're interested to see how that shapes us forwards as well. And they missed out on promotion by, I think it was 1 point by the end of the year. Very tight. Yeah, very, or it might have even been goal difference or something like that. So the stronger the Women's Premier League can be and Youth League can be in the district's only going to help the whole ecosystem, be that MPL, be that club football, be that even Division 6 or whatever we go down to. That whole ecosystem is going to be better if it's more competitive and like versus like across their games most of the season.
Yep. So, and then this year we've got 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia too. How do you see that will benefit the Hills Football Association by hosting the World Cup in Australia?
I think it's just going to benefit the Hills. I think it's just going to benefit football, male and female. It's not just going to grow the female game. It's just going to grow the game in general. I can't wait. It's going to be the first Football World Cup I've got to go to, and I snapped up as many tickets as I could, nice and early. got finals tickets, got Australia tickets, got England tickets. I'm very happy to be going, but putting it front and center, in front of people's face, and bringing what I believe is the best game in the world to Australia, bringing the best players. It's going to hopefully turn a few people's heads that haven't perhaps seen it before, or it's just you're going to have role models that are going to come out of it. There's going to be stories that people are going to love with, that people want to emulate their superstars. I've got daughters, and Sam Kerr and Mary Fowler are the two favourites in my house. They'll get up and watch those two girls, but they're not so worried about watching the Socceroos. So it's all, it needs to be relatable in particular for young girls, just seeing girls out there doing that, so that they can feel that it's achievable for them to go and emulate that, and copy that, and be that. Because we've all seen that with other female athletes throughout Australian sports history, that there's, whatever the sport is, there's been someone that stood up and done something that sort of galvanizes someone. And I'm really hopeful that that's going to see some breed of either growth in terms of numbers, or just growth in terms of, well, I can do that, and there is a real pathway and a real opportunity to be on the world stage. And we just saw Remy Simpson sign for Leicester City in the WSL from Manly. So who's going to be the Hills player? We've got Kai Simon, used to play for Hills Brumbies many years ago. So we've sort of got one player that has dipped a toe into Hills football landscape and made it onto the big stage.
There will be more.
One? There's going to be one at some stage. Who's it going to be? Or is it just going to be, let's grow the numbers that are going to enjoy this game?
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about your background before you came into this role? What have you done in the world of football? So I see a fairly strong British accent there. Who do you like in the APL?
Yeah, strong British accent. It depends on who you talk to. I talk to my family and all my friends, and they think I'm nothing but Australian now.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, I grew up in Hertfordshire, England, just outside of London. I was born in Watford, so I actually have two English teams, and it's very common for young boys in England to support a Premier League team and a more local team, So Watford was my local team. I had kind of no choice with that one, because that's where I was born, and most of my mum's side of the family are Watford fans. And they were my lower league team at the time. And then Newcastle United became my Premier League team. And Alan Shearer, Kevin Keegan were my idols growing up. Yeah. The annoyance was I ended up choosing a team that I was going to played all sorts of things with my feelings over the years, up and down, and going up to the northeast to watch games. It's incredible memories that I really cherish. I moved over here once I went to uni for a little bit and fell in love with Australia and wanted to stay, and really just didn't want to go back. So I've lived here since 2010. I've had a number of roles in football in Australia, and I've been very fortunate. I've basically only worked in football in Australia. Before Hills Football, I was the GM and the technical director at Stanmore Hawks, who are now Inner West Hawks. And we, 2 years there, grew that club. I got some really good success, but needed to move closer to home. And prior to that, I was actually the TD at Hills United for a bit as well. So I did 3 years there. Was the first grade coach and TD in the year that they got promoted into the division they are now with the boys, and they've been able to sort of galvanize upon that, and they've stayed there ever since. After the year before I came in, they had a relegation, so they've been able to stabilize. And I've sort of dealt my hand across a lot of Sydney in terms of football. I've had coaching at schools, Knox Grammar School, Narrabeen Sports High School, Cheltenham Girls School, a variety of different bits and pieces all the way that I have, and sort of grown myself into a position where I've touched disabled sport. I've been involved in the Pararoos to some extent, and all sorts of things that there isn't I don't think there's a part of football I haven't really experienced, other than some of the disability sports, which is probably another area that the game needs to grow very quickly. Although the Pararoos have got a home game in Manly, I think, coming up next week.
Yeah, that helps bring a very diverse range of skills and understanding and everything like that to what you've done. So how did you feel when David James then went from Watford and signed for Liverpool back in the 90s? That might have been a bit of blow.
No, not at that time, because it was a huge step forwards for him.
Yeah.
He actually lived around the corner from where I grew up.
Not
So
really.
it
He's
was,
a big guy.
he was always that celebrity, or like you would sort of say, oh, that's David James's brother or something like that. You kind of always knew of him, and it was Watford, I think, were League One back then. So
Yeah.
you couldn't really hold anyone a grudge or taking that opportunity to further their career going on. And it was probably more of the case of, wow, someone from our town has made it to the Premier League. Why can't we be that? Sort of, it was more of an inspiration more than it was a kick in the guts that he's left your club, because at that stage with Watford, that's what all the best players were going to be doing because of where they were. But for me as a young boy, it was like someone's playing at the top that grew up around the corner from where I went to my school or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it was, and that's kind of the hope that the Women's World Cup will be for a lot of young boys and girls.
Yeah. Well, Graham Taylor was the manager at Watford too, wasn't he, before he went to England? Yeah. So was that a bit of an inspiration for you to go into coaching?
Not with that one, because that was a bit before my time. He went back to Watford a few years later on, and that's when I sort of really engaged with Watford around that time. It was my involvement in coaching, or pathway to start coaching, was a little bit different to most, in that I can remember year 9 at school sitting with the careers advisor going, so what do you want to do when you have to go and get a job and whatever? And I remember then going, I want to be a football coach. And they kind of laughed and went, yeah, that's not a job. Like, don't only ex-professional footballers do that sort of job? And I went, yeah, but I think I would enjoy it. And my playing career was never particularly special. I played at Stevenage Borough Football Club for a couple of years until like under 19s, but really it's just
not bad about Vauxhall Conference League.
Yeah, I never even got a reserve call up, so it was nothing to really write home about. It was mostly just community-based football, but I just had a passion for it, and I used to coach my mates' teams, and just went, and I think I really started coaching at probably 16, and just doing bits and pieces and getting experience and trying it. And it's always just been a passion that I've really enjoyed, and it's nice going to work being your hobby. You don't get up too many mornings and go, I've got to go to training tonight or whatever, and then you see the enjoyment of the kids developing and enjoying themselves, and then they move on to different avenues. And there's a couple of players that I've coached now that are playing professional or involved with the Olympic squads and whatnot. And you can say that I've coached them for a little bit. I've had 0.5% of involvement in their football journey that now has got them to somewhere. That's it's kind of a weird feeling when you're sitting at Sydney FC games or whatever, going, hang on, those 2 or 3 I used to coach when they were 16, or I took them at this tournament or whatever. You go, I wonder if they remember me. Hopefully they are thankful for something I said somewhere. I haven't surely scared them off or said something too wrong.
It planted the seed to fire them up. So what does, as a TD, what does a successful year look like for you this year in Hills Football Association?
Or for me, it's a variety, because my role spans a number of different avenues. There's going to be, in terms of the AYL program, it's going to be a high retention rate. How many players at the end of the year would we want to re-sign at trials? Because they've done well enough that we want to keep them. That's probably a huge part of that. Or how many of them progress out of our program into Hills United. That's and they've developed well enough that the higher level of competition want to take them. That's a huge level. A well-run culture within that program, that I don't have parents complaining about game time, or that the coach said this or the coach said that everyone sort of is happy. That's a big target and success that you want to go through in that space. In the football development space, it's more about participation numbers grow, more players come into academy, more players joining club football, more players return into their club the year afterwards, because clubs can't grow if they're losing players every year. They need to retain their current players, and then they need to add in the new ones on top of that. Coaching courses, growing female coaches, be that just for the registrations, be that just for the actual certification. Trying to break that 250 qualified coaches is sort of my aim in qualification space, and it's going to be flat out. It's going to be a challenge, but we know that roughly 28% of registered coaches hold a qualification across the association, which we wouldn't send our kids to school if 28% of teachers were qualified, right? But
no.
we're very happy to send them to sport with a volunteer coach that isn't qualified. Well, one course can take 3 hours, and our mini route certificate is 3 hours and it's free. So why can't you do that?
Yeah, it's good, and you get the put back to the game. So that's the best thing. So ultimately, the kids and the players that we're around, we're mentoring them and teaching them the love for the game and all the bits and pieces that come with that as well. How to try to be better players and better people overall. So, Dan, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciated it. I know you're a busy man too, so I'll let you go. I hope to catch up with you throughout the season, and that would be great if we could sometime maybe catch up and have a chat out on the field, and I can check out how you do things and how you coach and mentor the coaches you've got working with you as well.
Yeah, maybe we'll meet up Women's Premier League and watch one of the local derbies across the associations.
Absolutely. Sounds good to me. So there you go. Thanks, everybody. You can thank Dan Sheppard for his time today or here on Duckman TV. So this will go in. You'll see it. For written article will go into Independent Magazine in a couple of weeks' time, and you'll hear this come on podcast as well on Duckman Sports Wrap. Thanks, everybody. Keep on ducking, and chat to you soon. Bye.